Good evening. My name is Cici Beltran, and I am the Vice President of Marketing at Build-A-Bear Workshop and also the Board Secretary here at the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of Metropolitan St. Louis. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this year's Hispanic Working Women, Blazing Trails and Breaking Ceilings. As our theme suggests, this event will explore innovation, resilience, ingenuity, and the entrepreneurship of Hispanic working women across various industries. We are proud to be able to offer you this program thanks to our title sponsor, Midwest Bank Center, who has done so much to make this evening possible. Tonight, we will hear from three speakers: Pauly Rodriguez, CEO and founder of Unbound; Gabriela Ramiréz-Arellano, Director of Entrepreneurship and Executive Director of the Center for Emerging Technologies at Cortex Innovation Community; and our keynote speaker, Helga Flores Trejo, Vice President of Global Public Affairs and International Organizations at Bayer, each one known for standing up and pushing right through the glass ceiling. After each speaker addresses the group, we will have a Q&A session, so feel free to get your questions ready. In addition to learning from our peers, we are lucky enough to be able to learn from the past, with content from our friends at the Missouri History Museum's Beyond the Ballot exhibit. Now, before we begin the evening, we are offering a special door prize, which is the book appropriately titled Groundbreakers, Rule Breakers, and Rebels, 50 Unstoppable St. Louis Women. And we're grateful to the Missouri History Museum for this donation. Drum roll, please. The congratulations go to Madeline Better. You are our door prize winner. We will reach out to you after the program to get your mailing address so we can send you your book. Additionally, don't forget to join us after all of our presentations have concluded for networking and discussion via the Teams link located on the Hispanic Working Women Facebook event page. We also invite you to enjoy our virtual photo booth, also located on the Facebook event page, which is brought to you by our gold sponsors of Heart in the City photo booth. In case you missed all that, head over to the Hispanic Working Women Facebook event page after our speakers are done for more event engagement. Now, let's get this show on the road. I'll hand the reins over to Danielle Bateman-Gerando from Midwest Bank Center, our sponsor for the evening. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. I am so absolutely honored to be here today at the annual Hispanic Chamber of Commerce Working Women event, surrounded by such incredible women and such talented women who are certainly blazing trails and breaking ceilings. Midwest Bank Center is proud to once again partner with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce on this event. We thank Carlos Ramirez and his entire team for all that they do in our region and for their friendship and partnership at the bank. At Midwest Bank Center, we believe that every person, every business, every community deserves the right to dream big, to break ceilings, to achieve their personal and financial goals. That all starts with access to capital. Access to capital to own a home, to start or scale a business, or to fund a child's education. As we look back on this past year, we see lives and livelihoods that have been upended. While the pandemic was challenging for all of us, it was particularly hard on working women. A recent study by McKinsey and LinkedIn.org found that that looked at the impact of COVID-19 on families, found that 1 in 4 women were considering downshifting their careers or leaving the workplace entirely. This is scary, and just one reason why events like today are just so important. The lessons learned, the connections made, the friendships made, all help us as women succeed professionally and personally. At Midwest Bank Center, we work together with organizations like the Hispanic Chamber and with professional women like you to help each individual succeed and to help our communities succeed. Thank you for being here. And like you, I look forward to learning from this incredible group of professional women how to blaze trails, how to break ceilings, not only for ourselves, but for the future generations. All right, now let me turn it over to Alex Mccreary Ellis, the program coordinator at the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Alex?
Hello, and thank you. Thank you, Danielle, and thank you all for joining us this evening. Through events like Hispanic Working Women, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of Metropolitan St. Louis will continue to fulfill its mission of improving opportunities for Hispanic businesses and professionals in the region for another 39 years. Thank you so much for those words, Danielle. Danielle recently wrote a thought-provoking article that expands more on the challenges faced by today's working women. I invite you to search it and read it. It's titled, Shared Responsibility at Home, a Business Imperative. As Cece mentioned earlier, our theme this year, Blazing Trails and Breaking Ceilings, celebrates resilience. Our first guest is a perfect embodiment of that. She worked with senators, consulting firms, and startups. Then at 21, she was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer and given a 30 to 40% chance of survival. After her treatment resulted in early onset menopause, a nurse friend recommended that she find a vibrator as therapy, only to find that the best option was a store near the St. Louis airport that left her feeling uncomfortable and unhappy. Today, she is the CEO and co-founder of Unbound, a rebellious sexual wellness company that makes vibrators, lubricants, and accessories. Her journey has been profiled in Forbes, the New York Times, Refinery 29, and the Latinx Founders Collective, with Unbound being hailed by the New York Times as the ideological center of the tech-savvy, female-led women's sexuality movement, with over 50 products created by a team of, and I want to emphasize, all women in New York City. Welcome to Hispanic Working Women, Polly Rodriguez. Polly.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I'm going to share this presentation, but what an incredible group to just be surrounded by before even kicking off anything. So the title of my presentation is, What Does It Mean to Blaze a Trail? And who better to answer that question than the one and only Dolly Parton, who said, if you don't like the road you're walking, start paving another one. I'm Polly Rodriguez. It's wonderful to be here. My family immigrated here from Spain in 1917. They were part of the Spanish Society in St. Louis. My dad was the first generation in his family to go to college. And I grew up in both Shaw and the Chesterfield neighborhoods. Go Cardinals, Cardinal fan forever. And I worked for Senator Claire McCaskill and Deloitte Consulting in their strategy practice before starting my own company. And that's just a photo of my dad being my dad outside the Spanish Society downtown. As I mentioned, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Unbound, which is a sexual wellness company, which is certainly a topic that makes us all feel vulnerable, but none of us would be here on this earth without it. As the CEO and co-founder, I have raised $4.5 million in venture capital. I've led $14 million in revenue. We've been profitable since 2019. We placed second at TechCrunch Disrupt in 2018, and our products are sold in Urban Outfitters, Madewell, Target, and MoMA, just to name a couple of retailers we work with. Those bullet points really make blazing a trail sound so easy and like very glamorous, right? Like, who wouldn't want to do that? It wasn't. It very much was not glamorous, and it still isn't. First of all, how do you tell your Hispanic father that you want to start a vibrator business? Second of all, how do you even start a business when you've never done it before? The answer that I found is that you take it one day at a time. Blazing a trail isn't always what it seems. These are photos of articles that I've been mentioned in. If you Google my name, this is what it pops up. Very beautiful photos, catchy headlines. It seems like I have everything figured out and everything has just been great since day one. But this is what the reality was when I first started the business. I was storing inventory in my apartment in Manhattan as a 30-year-old living with two other 22-year-olds that were still in college. I worked 3 part-time jobs in addition to trying to get the business off the ground. That is a photo of Mary Tyler Moore, not me, but you get the point. I personally packed our orders for customers for 3 years across 4 different warehouses. I worked pop-ups most weekends, which meant I had no social life, and I definitely was single for like 7 years. I also got cancer along the way, and I attended hundreds of awkward networking events because I had no community in the startup network. Oh, right, raising the VC funding thing. That was super, super easy, like not difficult at all. Here are just a couple of examples of the responses that I received when I first started pitching investors. Everything from, we don't think this is defensible, to, oops, we don't think that there's enough technology here. Basically telling me every day nonstop that not only would my idea not work, it was a terrible idea. It was 2.5 years of rejections, personal rejections from investors, and 309 of those added up to feeling very much like a failure. But you just keep going. And eventually you will get to a yes. This is the email that I received. I'll never forget when I got it. I was at the US Post Office and I was actually shipping out orders, and I went to check my phone and I saw this email from this investor who said he was willing to put in $650,000 and lead our seed round of fundraising. And I sat down in the middle of the post office and began to cry because I genuinely never thought that this day would come. Because there were lots of days where I just didn't want to keep going at all. So basically, the heart of what I wanted to say is what I've learned and how I willed myself to keep going. The first is find a community and surround yourself with people who lift you up. Obviously, if you are here today, you understand the value of that. For me, it was not belonging in the startup community because many people felt what we were doing was too taboo or stigmatized. And then conversely, attending, adult industry conventions, I very much did not belong there either. And so I started my own community and organization called the Women of Sex Tech, which originally was just 5 founders. And now today it's 250 femme and non-binary founders, all dedicated to improving sexual health for people everywhere. Which is all to say that if you feel like you don't belong in a community, I can pretty much guarantee you others feel that way as well. So don't be afraid to find a community or build one completely on your own. The next is don't be embarrassed of doing what it takes to get to where you want to go. And quite honestly, I think this one is my favorite, in particular because I have a really good story that kind of embodies this value. When I was first starting the company, one of my part-time jobs was selling raffle tickets on nights and weekends. And there was this gala that was $2,000 a head, and it was beautiful and this gorgeous banquet. And I was there selling raffle tickets for $50 a pop, wearing a gigantic headset and a massive cummerbund. And who walks in but my ex-boyfriend and his beautiful new girlfriend in this gorgeous ball gown. And I was so embarrassed to be there in this outfit carrying these raffle tickets that I immediately turned to run to the bathroom to hide. And in doing so, I ran into a bunch of strollers and completely wiped out so badly that for the rest of the evening, people kept coming up to me asking if I was physically okay. And so I guess my point is, if I could go back and tell myself anything, I would say, do not be ashamed or embarrassed of doing what it takes to try to make your dream a reality. There's nothing shameful about that. My next piece of advice would be just learn by doing. Know that you will not have all the answers, but trust yourself enough to figure it out. I had no idea how to design a website, how to take photography, how to do our accounting on QuickBooks, but I decided that I was just going to put myself out there and try. I would Google, I would watch YouTube videos, and slowly but surely, I was able to figure it out on my own, even though people often asked if I was technical or if I had a technical background, if I was an engineer. I was able to learn by doing and find myself well-versed enough that people took me seriously, and I was able to get it done because as an entrepreneur, done is almost always better than perfect. My next piece of advice is just show up. Always show up. Put yourself out there, even when it feels scary, especially when it feels scary. For me, when I first started applying to try to pitch at different startup competitions and for accelerators, I got rejected across the board. And so I would start to apply for ones that were a little shall we say, less known. The first opportunity I had to pitch in front of investors was in the middle of nowhere in rural Virginia. I had to get up on stage after a man who was pitching cow manure as fertilizer. And as I began to talk about Unbound and going through menopause and the importance of sexual wellness, the whole crowd started to laugh. And I thought they were laughing at me, but the reality was they were just uncomfortable with what I was talking about. At the end of the presentation, it was pretty much silent, except for one woman who was in the audience who raised her hand and said, "Can I write you a check right now?" And despite the fact that it was mortifying and terrifying, I ended up getting our first angel investor as a result of just showing up and putting my best foot forward. Second to last, I believe, is remind yourself that failure is inevitable and unrelenting, but so are you. You're going to fail no matter what. You will face failure and you will overcome it. Know that that is not unique to you, even though it feels like everyone else around you is succeeding and you're not. That's actually not the reality. So just know that you will fail, but you will also overcome it. And then last, but definitely not least, is to be kind to yourself. No one has it all figured out, especially in the world of entrepreneurship. I like to tell myself that we're all holding it together with duct tape. Some people are just better at making their duct tape look really pretty, like the people that can make prom dresses and wallets out of it. But just be kind to yourself. Everyone's going to fail and it's going to be difficult. And you need to remember to surround yourself with people who believe in you, because there will definitely be days when you don't believe in yourself. But most of all, don't give up. It's a long, difficult journey in terms of entrepreneurship, breaking glass ceilings and blazing trails. But the world needs more women like you blazing trails and smashing those glass ceilings. Thank you so much, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Polly, for sharing that with us. Polly is now going to be answering your questions. So if you have any questions for her, please click the question mark box, which you can find on the side of your screen, to ask away. So Polly, let's start with why do you think it was so hard to find investors for Unbound at first?
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate reality is that in 2019, 2.8% of venture funding went to women, and in 2020, that decreased to 2.3%, which is absolutely abysmal. And when you take into account Hispanic founders, Black founders, the numbers are even smaller. And so no matter what, you're going into this knowing that you have to defy the odds to raise venture funding. When you couple that with being a business that focuses on sexual health and wellness, your odds are essentially slim to none. And I think for Unbound specifically, it was difficult because sexuality is something that requires us all to be vulnerable and reflect personally on what our relationship is to it. And there, are a lot of investors that aren't open or willing or interested in doing that. And so it just took finding the one person that believed in it. And then the thing that shocked me was within 2 weeks, our entire seed round was oversubscribed. Like, it was completely full and we couldn't fit anyone else in, which I think goes to show that oftentimes people are just so afraid to believe in someone that doesn't look like them or doesn't share the same background as them. But it only takes, as Lady Gaga said when she did all of her PR tour for A Star Is Born, there can be 10,000 people in the room, and it really genuinely only takes one.
Absolutely, that's great. Yeah. So let's see, we have a question here. How did you start creating your community?
Well, there are two that I worked on. The first, which I'm assuming the question's about, is the Women of Sex Tech. It really happened organically. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any peers in the industry. And so a friend would know a friend, and I would get coffee with them, and they were working on something similar. And I realized at a certain point, I was getting like 3 to 4 coffees a week. And I realized that it would be a lot more effective if all of us met together and talked about a lot of the issues we face. Like, we can't advertise on any social media platforms, despite the fact that like male sexual wellness companies can. And so we just started having meetings very informally, like once every 1 to 2 months. And it just started to grow organically because there wasn't community and support for founders that were trying to build businesses in this sector. So I don't know if that answers the question, but honestly, it happened very naturally and over a long period of time. It didn't happen overnight. It took years.
Okay. So you just were friends, who recruited friends, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised. I think like when you're a woman and you're trying to start a business or do anything that's different from the vast majority of your peer set of like your peers, you're desperate. I was desperate for community. I just wanted friends that were also staying up late and working on their side hustles, as opposed to like going out to dinner and partying all the time. And so even just having somebody to sit and work with you late at night was really wonderful. And it allowed me to keep going when I felt really alone starting a business, for sure.
Sure. Well, that tapping into that passion kind of leads into this question, this comment question. I love your passion. What drives you? Where do you find motivation to keep going?
Truthfully, it's all the other women, femme, non-binary people that I get to work with every day, whether that's our customers who write in, who tell us about how meaningful our products are to them. But I think more than that, it's really just the women that I get to work beside every day, who none of them actually had experience in the role that they're in now before I hired them for that role specifically. And I think that goes to my Midwestern values, being raised in St. Louis, which is just if you are willing to like work hard and you're really curious and intellectually just curious, I think that like that is worth so much more than where you went to school or what your previous career experience is, because it's that drive and that fire and that hunger and that passion that I see in other women, where it's like, I have to work with this person. I have to be a part of this because they're going to make me better at what I do. And hopefully I will be able to do the same for them.
Yeah. We have another question here. It seems like you were really busy. How did you balance your life? And do you have a morning routine to help you with that?
It was when I used to watch all these like startup videos in the morning when I was getting ready, because I would have to pack all of our orders. And I remember watching this or hearing this one interview with this founder who said quite plainly, there are 5 things in life, and it was like sleep, exercise, family, friends, and a social, or maybe like I can't remember what the 5th one is, but it was like you get to pick 3 of those in terms of you have to give up something in order to make it happen. I wish it wasn't that way, but at least for me, because I had to bootstrap for 2.5 years, the only time that I could work on the business was on nights and weekends. And so I actually enjoyed packing orders and I enjoyed doing customer service, and it was always late at night, but in the morning, I would, listen to how I built this on NPR or watch Y Combinator videos on how to build a startup. And that way I felt like I'm working on the business physically, because I have to pack every order. I have to answer every customer service email. But then I also felt like I was learning while I was doing it, which is a very millennial ADHD approach, I would think. But it allowed me to learn while doing, which definitely kept me motivated. But I still struggle to manage my time. Honestly, it's hard.
Sure. Well, I think that's all the time we have for Q&As. Thank you so much, Polly. Such a wonderful presentation. And I think that's all the time we have. But thank you.
Thank you. What an amazing event. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. And now let's learn a little bit about some trailblazing St. Louis women from the past with this clip from the Missouri History Museum. After that, you'll be joined by Natalia Mccreary of Midwest Bank Center, who will be taking over as MC for the evening.
Just a few years apart, Annie Turnbow Malone and Fanny Salins lived in different worlds, and at first glance seemed to have nothing in common, but both dedicated their lives to serving their communities and ended up helping thousands, perhaps millions of women live safer, more prosperous lives. Annie Turnbow Malone came to St. Louis in 1902, having recently invented a hair care product for women of color called Wonderful Hair Grower. She hired a few assistants and they sold her product door to door. She continued to develop other products and sold them under the brand name Poro. By 1918, Annie was a multimillionaire and her company employed 75,000 women worldwide. One of the wealthiest women in the country, Annie was a generous philanthropist and gave money to local organizations as well as historically Black colleges across the country. For nearly 25 years, she was the president of the St. Louis Colored Orphans Home, which was later renamed in her honor and is still in operation today. In 1920, Annie built Poro College in the Ville neighborhood. The building, which covered an entire city block, served as Poro headquarters and also as a community center for the entire area. It contained a public cafeteria, hotel rooms, and a 500-seat auditorium. Unfortunately, Poro declined following Annie's contentious divorce, but she remained an astute businesswoman and dedicated philanthropist until her death in 1957. Unlike Annie Malone, Fanny Sellens never owned her own business or knew great wealth, but she dedicated everything she had, including her own life, to making the lives of others better. Fanny moved to St. Louis after she married, but her husband died young, leaving her a widowed mother of 4 children. She found work in a garment factory and discovered awful conditions, such as being locked into the facility every morning. Determined to improve the treatment of all workers, most of them women, Fanny organized Local Number 67 of the International Ladies Garment Workers Union and soon became its chief negotiator. Following the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York in 1911, Fanny represented more than 400 St. Louis garment workers who went on strike to demand a 9-hour workday instead of the required 14-hour day, as well as wage increases. Her successful negotiation in St. Louis made national news, and in 1913 she moved to West Virginia to work with the United Mine Workers of America and their families. In 1919, she continued her work in Pennsylvania. Fanny was beloved by union workers, but she was also a regular target of anti-unionists and was arrested many times. She was murdered during a violent strike in Pennsylvania at just 47 years old.
Thank you to the Missouri History Museum for sharing that inspiring clip. I hope we all became inspired to show the same generosity that Annie Malone displayed and the dedication and determination that helped Fanny Sellens improve the lives of thousands of workers. I'm excited to be here with you and even more excited to hear next from the one and only Gabriela Ramiréz-Arellano. Gabriela, you emceed last year's event, so I have big shoes to fill. Anyway, we're really excited to have you this time as a speaker.
Thank you so much, Natalia.
Gabriela Ramiréz-Arellano is the Director of Entrepreneurship and Executive Director at the Cortex Innovation Community. She's a business leader and entrepreneur, and since 2011, she's been helping small business owners as they start and grow their businesses. Gabriela has been named by the St. Louis Business Journal as one of the top 100 people to know to succeed in business, and by the St. Louis Business Journal as a diverse business leader in the St. Louis region. Gabriela also owns Don Emiliano's Restaurante Mexicano in O'Fallon, Missouri, in partnership with her husband. I hope you all get to visit it. But Gabriela is a relentless professional. She's also the co-founder of STL Juntos. She's a podcast host at Auténtico, and she manages to stay healthy by running marathons. So, Gabriela, we really want to learn from you.
Buenas tardes. Thank you so much, Natalia. Good evening, everyone. I'm a little emotional about tonight, as the journey that has led me to this moment has been full of surprises and experiences. My mission with today's words is to encourage you to identify your strong suits, collaborate with others, and ask for help. Because let's face it, we all go through hard times. Remember that nothing beats a failure but a try. In 2018, a young woman, a former bartender and the daughter of a working-class family, decided to run for office. It was not the most well-known, well-funded campaign, but one backed by trustworthy relationships. Her win paved the way for more hopefuls of any age, gender, or culture. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stands as one of the most well-known, trailblazing millennials, challenging the status quo, using her uniqueness to gain supporters, and encouraging a generation to get involved. I am also reminded of the story of 3 Latina restaurant owners in Chicago who managed to keep their doors open during the pandemic by getting creative and ensuring that nothing went to waste. At the end of each workday, each owner gave back by giving away leftover food to anyone in need. As a Latina restaurant owner and businesswoman, I too share a similar story as the 3 women, knowing firsthand the struggles of maintaining a business for almost 6 years. Our stories paint a picture that trailblazers reach their goals and meet the needs of a community by using our skills, developing partnerships, operating in our uniqueness, and equipping others to join the work. At this special moment in our lives, when we talk about celebrating innovation, bravery, and determination in business, I am honored to be among a group of trailblazers who are setting the tempo for your business and lives. But I gotta tell you, 2020 was a hell of a year. It was also a revealing year. During these shifting times of uncertainty, sadness, and the terrible feeling of not knowing what to do next or what will happen next, we also got a chance to see what our greatest resources are. As CDC guidelines were going to the public last year, I noticed a lack of information and support for non-English speakers and especially the Spanish-speaking community in St. Louis. In a time when it was critical for everyone to be informed of safety protocols, groups of people were left out of receiving this vital information. We watched that happen for a few days, waiting for someone to do something about it. And we waited, realizing eventually that if it is to be, it is up to me. And that is how Lourdes Treviño Bailón and I founded Estia Juntos in March of 2020, with the goal of connecting, informing, and educating the community on the latest coronavirus information. By leveraging our network and through formalized partnerships, we created a system to provide individuals, families, and even other organizations with the resources that they needed to survive day to day. As the summer started, we began to see a growing need for food, and we were eventually giving out 1,700 meals at each of our distribution sites 6 days a week. Estia Juntos was our creative outlet and also allowed us to advocate for food, technology, and language access, all gaps that had previously existed but could no longer be ignored. Besides helping people directly, the role of advocates has given us a seat at the city and county level in both St. Louis and St. Charles. And we're currently one of the driving forces behind having resources in Spanish, such as the State of Missouri COVID Navigator, the county graphics, and other PSAs, as well as the outreach and vaccination events with the City of St. Louis and St. Charles County. Additionally, we have given out more than 65,000 masks in the last year. Can you believe that? 2 women that decided to do something different. With that collaborative effort, we joined in the ranks of several hundred Latino-owned businesses helping to push the country forward. In the same year, we benefited and witnessed from Latina-owned businesses that fueled the economy. Thriving under the national radar of over 600,000 Latina-owned businesses in the country, according to the U.S. Small Business Administration report. There is no doubt that the number of Hispanics in business is growing rapidly. But the question to answer and what we'll dive into is, how do we continue to increase and invite new people on this business journey? I like to think of accomplishing this with an actionable approach. So today, I'm asking you to live in your work. I believe in balance, but I also know you guys know I'm a workaholic, and it's hard to keep balance. So I'm not encouraging anyone to work nonstop, but I'm actually promoting authenticity and building relationships in 4 areas. So first, lean into the skill sets that you have. When everything you know shuts down, your greatest resource is your mind. Knowing who you are and what you can do is a great resource to lean on when faced with a new beginning. Right after I got divorced and was looking for my first job, I found myself at the Office of Social Services, applying for food and cash assistance. My case manager asked me about my skill sets, and my response was, I can do two things. I can speak Spanish, and I'm a professional Girl Scout volunteer. A few weeks later, Girl Scouts of Southeastern Michigan posted a job for a Hispanic Initiative Coordinator in Southwest Detroit. And it was there that I began my career. That job opened up the doors to many opportunities. 2, incorporate partnerships into your business. Last year taught me that there is no such thing as a solopreneur, simply because we accomplish so much more together. We need relationships in business. There is no way that Lourdes and I could serve over 3,000 meals weekly to the community without collaboration. When we start to see people in the same occupational field as a means to reach even more people, that's the power of partnerships. Leveraging resources plus collaboration equals newfound opportunities. 3rd, value the uniqueness that only you can bring to the table. If another person, business, or organization offers the same services that you do, please do me a huge favor. Don't count yourself out. Instead, focus on the access. When we started STL Juntos, there were other organizations that already provided Spanish information to the Spanish-speaking community. What made us different is we spoke Spanish to Spanish speakers on the platforms where they were. If you've ever seen our Facebook Lives, you'll know what I'm talking about. Your solution to a problem may be similar to what someone else is providing, but they can't do it the way you do. And lastly, equip others. The knowledge that you have is meant to be shared. Imagine if those who have helped you along the way withheld their knowledge and lessons learned. Chances are you wouldn't be where you are or who you are today. Everything that we know can be attributed to someone else's research and lessons learned. When we equip others, we serve as a mentor and coach, often for free, but the payment is received in the structured and successful lives that our mentees choose to live based on what we've helped them learn. When you want to quit because you think that you don't fit the status quo, remember Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez and continue to go forward. Live in your work. When you feel like your business won't sustain after a major blow to the global economy, remember the stories of the 3 Latina women in Chicago and myself. Get creative and focus on meeting the needs. And live in your work. When you feel like you can run a business alone, remember there's no such thing as a solopreneur. Live in your work. I believe tonight is a turning of a page where some will begin and others will continue to pay it forward by equipping and supporting each other. Tonight is the genesis of bridges that are being built. Tonight is a confirmation that your uniqueness is necessary, not just to your success, but to the success of others. And tonight is the start of brainstorming partnerships so that the work does not have to be done in isolation. It has been my personal privilege to be with each of you tonight, and I look forward to continuing to work with you in the future. Thank you.
Gabriela, you have built an amazing network, and I know that that has helped tremendously as well. I think I speak for everyone listening live that we appreciate your great insights and your tips. I particularly really enjoy when you said you don't need to wait for someone to do something about a situation. We all have the power to take action, and we have to put our solution to a problem in action. So thank you very much for everything that you have done for our community in regards to COVID-19 response. Gabriela, let's go ahead and ask some questions. Let me see if we've received any from the audience, so please feel free to type your question. Let's start with you have built an amazing, we talked about that one. At the beginning of your presentation, you talked about how important it is to ask for help. What guidance would you give to someone who's intimidated by asking for help?
That's a great question, Natalia. And I have to say that it's going to be hard, but we have to get comfortable with that feeling of something being difficult, right? That's the story of our lives. You start a new job, you have to figure it out. What I always tell people is when they say, well, I didn't want to ask you for help, is don't rob me or take away from me the opportunity to use my skill set. So when you reframe it that way and you think about, I'm not going to ask Alex to help me because I want to bother her, but I'm going to give Alex the opportunity to showcase her skill sets, or maybe to, level up to a certain extent if she can help me in some way. So, the answer would be it's not going to be easy, but it is something that also is helping the other person. So when you reframe it that way, maybe it'll be a little bit easier for you when you do need help to realize that you have a full network that can do that.
Great. Gabriela, and how about, I'm pretty sure you found yourself in situations where you think that, you know what, I'm not going to be able to do this. The doors are getting closed for me. What advice do you have to women that are facing the same situation?
I would say, going back to Polly's comments about your network, I remember when I got divorced, and the thing is, we think that we're the only ones that have ever felt that way or that have ever been in that situation. So I think it's important for you to realize that, yes, this is uncomfortable, again, that word, but I have a network of people that could support me or help me or lead me. I think that oftentimes, even working with small business owners, what I find often is that the resources and the network is ready to help, but we don't know that you need that help. So it goes back to that question about asking for help, and really, even, I know Polly even talked about, right, the network of people just staying up with her to brainstorm or to pack the orders or whatever, right? So just feeling like you're working on it with someone, even with the podcast, with the running, it's always easier when I do it with someone else. If I do it with Junior, if I'm running with Mireya. So I definitely say tap into your network and ask for help, because people want to help you.
Gabriela, thank you so much for your time. We have more questions, but we have to move forward. So I know you all have a way to get in contact with Gabriela if you want to continue talking to her. Now I have the pleasure of introducing one of my colleagues, Marcia Benny. Marcia is the Chief Financial Officer at Midwest Bank Center. Recently, the bank's CEO, Orb Kimbrough, said the following about Marcia, quote, "She's a trailblazer who has changed the bank's thinking about legacy systems, processes, and risk assessment." Marcia was also named one of the most influential businesswomen of 2020 by the St. Louis Business Journal. Marcia is going to talk about mentorship and the bank's efforts toward diversity and inclusion. Marcia?
Thank you so much for that introduction, Natalia. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening and to learn from the experiences of the inspiring women presenting this evening. I'd like to join my colleagues, Danielle Bateman-Gerando and Natalia, in expressing Midwest Bank Center's proud support of the Hispanic Chamber and this annual Women's Working event. Tonight, I want to share a few thoughts with you on the importance of mentoring and giving your gifts through volunteerism. And candidly, this builds on some of the advice that Gabriela just gave to us. There are countless benefits of having mentoring relationships, and I've personally benefited from them both as a mentor and a mentee many times throughout my career. And for the mentees, having the guidance of a mentor who will listen, who will encourage and advocate for you is so incredibly important. Having a mentor can make the difference between taking on career opportunities that you might not otherwise have pursued and opening doors and making connections that might not otherwise have been available. And as a mentor, paying forward your experiences to aspiring women is one of the most rewarding ways to invest your time. I've personally benefited from volunteering as a mentor and in developing my own leadership and management skills through the opportunity to listen and to learn from the diverse perspectives of my mentees. And in many cases, their feedback and perspective have actually influenced and informed decisions I've made relative to business plans and other business-related decision-making. Midwest Bank Center has a formal mentoring program called Women on the Rise, and this program was created 4 years ago by a high potential female leader in our organization for the benefit of other high potential female leaders and future leaders. And all of the program's mentors, including myself, share a deep commitment to the program and appreciate the importance of sharing the lessons we have learned to help other aspiring women. The program's been impactful and the results are evident. Since the program began 4 years ago, one of our female leaders, mentees, was promoted to the executive leadership team at Midwest Bank Center. 4 women have been promoted to the senior leadership level, and 11 women have been promoted to other leadership levels in the organization. So if your organization has a formal mentoring program, I would encourage you to take full advantage of it as either a mentee or a mentor. And if your company does not have a formal program, then I would encourage you to search your network and contact an inspiring connection about a mentoring relationship. And if you're approached by someone who's seeking your guidance and support as a mentor, I hope you'll embrace the opportunity. No matter where you are in your career journey, your experiences, your gifts, and your potential are important and valuable to share with someone else. At Midwest Bank Center, we value diversity and inclusion, not because it makes good business sense. It's central to our values as an organization and our belief that every person, every business, and every community deserves the right to dream big. And as Danielle said earlier, this begins with access to capital. The following video, narrated by our own CEO, Orvin Kimbrough, highlights Midwest Bank Center's commitment to diversity and inclusion. And we hope you'll join us in banking your values.
Choosing to make a difference in St. Louis can be as easy as choosing where you bank. Midwest Bank Center embraces diversity and inclusion, building strong relationships with community partners like the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. When you bank your values, we all rise together.
Thank you, Marcia and Midwest Bank Center, for encouraging us to seek out and support mentorship and diversity and inclusion in the workplace. The following video from the Missouri History Museum is another example of the powerful effect of women working together.
In 1910, the suffragists in St. Louis reorganized and formed the Equal Suffrage League. And for the next 10 years, the group was tireless in doing everything they could to promote the cause of women's right to vote. In late 1915, the suffragists found out that the 1916 Democratic National Convention would be held in St. Louis, and they came up with a unique idea to promote their cause. After several years of hosting parades and giving speeches throughout the city, this rally would be completely different. The event, which came to be known as the Golden Lane Parade, was billed as a walkless, talkless parade, taking place on the morning of June 14th, 1916, the first day of the convention. The ultimate goal of the event was to convince the delegates to add a pro-suffrage plan to the presidential platform. On that June morning, thousands of women from St. Louis and across the country put on white dresses with yellow Votes for Women sashes and carried yellow umbrellas, making their way to their assigned locations on Locust Street. They took their places on both sides of the street, silently presenting their unified message to the delegates as they walked from the Jefferson Hotel to the site of the convention, the newly constructed St. Louis Coliseum. At the halfway mark, a group of suffragists posed on the steps of the old art museum, creating a tableau or theatrical scene. Dressed in various colors of white, gray, and black, the women represented the status of women's voting rights across the country, while Lady Liberty held court at the top of the steps. The next day, newspapers from across the country printed photographs of the event, reporting that as many as 8,000 women had taken part. The organizers of the Golden Lane Parade accomplished their goal. The Democrats did include a suffrage plan in their platform. Despite the fact that national support for the suffrage cause was growing every day, the suffragists still had no guarantee that they would succeed in their push for women's voting rights. Their fight continued without pause after the resounding success of the Golden Lane Parade.
We want to take a minute to thank you, our guests, for choosing to spend the evening with us. Among our listeners, I was taking a look at the list, and we have powerful women that are helping to drive our region forward from their seats in a variety of roles and paths. We have women working in fields such as healthcare, research, banking, consumer packaged goods, nonprofits, and small businesses, just to name a few. And we should thank them for blazing trails and breaking ceilings and making a difference in our region, and for the women who'll come after us. After the break, we're gonna hear from our keynote speaker, Helga Flores Trejo. So I invite you to take a 10-minute break and use it to answer the poll, go to the bathroom, kiss a loved one or a pet, grab a glass of wine, and then be back on time for more amazing content.
Thanks to the dedication of women like Virginia Minor, the work of the Equal Suffrage League of St. Louis, and the success of national events like the Golden Lane Parade, the suffragists eventually achieved their goal, the passage of a federal amendment guaranteeing women the right to vote. But the suffragists' work wasn't over. Women across the country still needed to register to vote in order to cast ballots in the quickly approaching election. Anticipating this future need, Carrie Chapman Catt, at a national convention in 1919 held in St. Louis, called the suffragists to form a League of Women Voters. The nonpartisan organization soon became a reality, and the St. Louis League was among the first to be established in the United States, with Edna Gellhorn as its first president. When the 19th Amendment was finally ratified in August of 1920, the St. Louis League of Women Voters jumped into action. The presidential election was just 2 months away, and the suffragists did what they did best, organized a citywide rally to make it as easy as possible for the women of St. Louis to register to vote. September 13th, 1920, was the first day that women could register to vote in Missouri. And in the image behind me, you can see many members of the community, men and women, celebrating that momentous occasion. In 4 days, more than 125,000 women in St. Louis registered to vote, more than twice the number election officials had anticipated. As they registered, the women were given these flyers, posting them proudly in the windows of their homes to show that they would be participating for the first time ever in the upcoming election. On November 2nd, 1920, the women of St. Louis and millions more across the country participated in a national election for the first time. Unfortunately, no exact records were kept of how many women voted, but in Missouri, the number of ballots cast in 1920 was nearly twice the number counted in 1916. With the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920, women across the country gained the right to vote. But most women, especially women of color, continue to experience discrimination due to their gender. The fight for equality is not yet over, and women are not done fighting. In January of 2017, thousands of St. Louis women took part in the Women's March in downtown St. Louis as part of a national response to gender discrimination. That fight continues, with many St. Louis women standing at the forefront. The women highlighted in Beyond the Ballot show that they share a rich legacy of activism and community involvement that goes all the way back to the earliest days of the city. Then and now, St. Louis women are unstoppable. Thank you so much for joining me on this tour of Beyond the Ballot, St. Louis and Suffrage, an exhibit at the Missouri History Museum. If you're interested in learning more about the fascinating people and history of St. Louis, please visit mohistory.org for more information.
Welcome back, everyone. We want to invite you to join our virtual networking opportunity, specially planned for women and those that identify as women. That event follows right after this one. We'll add the login information in the Facebook events page, and you can also find it using the link button to the right of the video player. It is a great way to put in practice some of the tips we've heard from speakers in terms of building up your network and finding mentorship opportunities. So join us. I know you're going to have a blast. Now I have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker, Helga Flores Trejo. Helga serves as Vice President of Global Affairs for International Organizations at Bayer, where she is responsible for driving Bayer's relations in partnership with international organizations, and where she manages Bayer's multilateral trade policy. Prior to joining Bayer, she led open innovation at the Inter-American Development Bank and was head of external relations for the Inter-American Investment Corporation, known today as BID Invest. She has served as Chief of Staff for the Bundesrat and European Affairs Minister of the Government of Hamburg, as a senior advisor for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and as advisor on development policy in Latin America in the German Parliament, among others. Helga has been awarded fellowships by the German Marshall Fund of the United States, the Prince of Wales Business and Environment Program, and the BMW Herbert Quandt Foundation. She is a board member of Cultural Vistas, a nonprofit that promotes global understanding and collaboration among individuals and institutions. She served in the Commission for Civility and Effective Governance at the Center for the Study of the Presidency, and she was a member of the Europe-US Latin America Task Force of the Atlantic Council. Helga Flores holds a master's degree in international relations from Frankfurt University in Germany and speaks, wait for it, not 2, not 3, but 5 languages: Spanish, German, English, French, and Portuguese. Helga, we are more than honored to have you with us. Helga?
Thank you so much, Natalia. Thank you for your kind words, but most of all, thank you to all the team that made this event possible. It is really an honor for me to be invited by the Hispanic Chamber of Metropolitan St. Louis. Es un honor y un placer. And so it is really a great treat to be with you, with this group of special women. So I'm very much looking forward to our conversation. Now, let me start by saying, first thing, that this is not a story in black and white. This is about shades. That's why you're not going to see any colorful pictures during my presentation. What I want to emphasize is that what we call trailblazing is a gradual process. It's not linear. It's rather 80% craftswomanship and 20% luck. And it depends to a great extent on your role models and what they have taught you and your community. So it also requires the ability to read in between the lines. It requires the ability to see shades of gray, and absolutely no pun intended here. It requires also the insights on how society works and changes. And most of all, it requires an understanding of how the majority operates. And that, my fellow brown and black women in the room, is something that all of us are good at, because we are all in between people. We see things that others do not see because of our immigration background or our minority experience. We have grown up with in-between languages, cultures, and families. And because we had to leave things behind and acquire new abilities to succeed. So Natalia was recounting some of my experience. Yes, I have worked in government, international organizations, and in the corporate world, and have lived in Guadalajara, Berlin, Belgrade, Brasilia, and Washington, D.C. But looking back, I can say that I was able to succeed both because and despite being a Latina. Let me explain. First of all, I come from a family of strong women, true trailblazers. And you're seeing a picture of her here. My grandmother was born in Chalchihuite, Zacatecas in October 1928. That's the year that Amelia Earhart became the first woman to fly across the Atlantic. My grandmother, Maria Luisa, and her 5 siblings were raised by a single mother. She only met her father a few times. But she was bright and curious and went on to study her primary school, then train as a secretary and learn shorthand. This was as far as a woman from a small village in rural Zacatecas could go back then. She married far too early my grandfather, who became an engineer, and they had 5 children, my mom Marta being the oldest. After her birth, the family moved to Guadalajara in search of better opportunities. Then living in rural Zacatecas was tough, but it was not easy also moving for the city, the big city either, and being a domestic migrant, if you will. As the family was struggling, my mother had big dreams, my grandmother had big dreams of making life better for her children. So, determined to make headway, she left her husband and children twice and ventured north to California as bracera. In 1966, she picked strawberries. In 1967, she found employment in an office. She ended up putting all her children through university, and never tired, she began swimming and running half marathons at 55. And she continued to do so until she turned 78. So growing up, I remember my grandmother arriving with new medals from her competition. I can tell you she was not fast, but she always finished her race. So she was a tough woman. And as you know, endurance sports is as much about fitness as it is about mental strength. So my grandmother was nothing short of tremendous. And there are not enough words for us to describe her tenacity. At home, we often call her lovingly terca or even cabrona, giving her unwillingness to let things go. So what I learned is my first lesson from her, that as a Latina, you must be fearless. My mother was her mother's daughter. She married when she was 17. I was born a year later, and the next 4 years, my brothers Eduardo and Carlos completed the family. Having married so young, she had not had the opportunity to finish high school. So at 22, she found herself dealing with 3 unruly children, but that was not going to stop her. At 25, she decided, supported by my father, to go to school, to go back. She began her own journey from high school to university to becoming an accomplished and widely recognized dentist with her own doctor's practice. This was, as you may imagine, a torturous path. I vividly remember her long nights and weekends of studying while 3 noisy children demanded her attention. I am in my early 50s now, and looking back at my own decisions in life, it has become increasingly clear to me of how important it was to grow up with these strong, demanding, and tenacious women as role models. They provided me with a basic understanding that this is how women can be and must act, and that nothing should stop me. Maria Luisa and Marta have been my personal trailblazers. Their example was powerful and left an indelible and profound mark in me. Second, my professional career began with a failure. Growing up in Guadalajara, I had one major problem. I was young and a woman enthusiastic about politics and global affairs. But I rarely found others that shared these passions or that would serve as mentors. During the rather frequent Mexican family reunions, you know how they go, women and children sit on one corner of the room talking about family, while the men stand apart talking about politics. Well, growing up, I always wanted to stand with the men and shared my unsolicited opinion, but that was not welcomed. In pursuit of my dreams to become a diplomat, I planned to study in Mexico City at the famous Colegio de Mexico. The admission process is very competitive, with only 25 students being admitted every 2 years. Again, I had no role models or supporters in my close circle of friends and family. Still, I applied, was among those chosen to present the test in Mexico, and my father, supportive as always, sat with me for 10 hours in a night bus to Mexico City. We arrived in the morning, we headed to the colegio, my father waited while I took the test, and exhausted, we took the night bus back to Guadalajara that same day. I was eliminated in the second round. It was a completely devastating experience, since this career had been really in my dreams all along, and now it was shattered. I had no idea what to do next. A series of coincidences brought me to Germany. My best friend at school was Mexican-German, and I had already met my future husband from Germany. I had learned the language. So I ended up applying to the University of Frankfurt. I was accepted, moved to Germany at 21, and began to study political sciences. It was not an easy time. While I spoke some German and my future husband and a circle of friends provided support and guidance, there were moments alone in my bed at night when I asked myself, why on earth did I cross the Atlantic? However, moving to Germany changed my life forever. It shaped who I am today as a person and brought me to where I am now in my professional career. But all of that would have never happened without the initial failure. In fact, my most impactful, life-changing experiences kept coming because of previous failures. As a political appointee in the German government, I got kicked out of my job when the ruling coalition lost the election. From one day to the next, I went from being the chief of staff to a senator, acting as representative in the upper chamber, negotiating bills, attending countless receptions at embassies and being driven around by a driver at my disposal in Berlin, to filling unemployment papers and standing in line to receive my unemployment aid. I know it sounds melodramatic, but it was a massive fall from grace for me, and it was not easy to recover in that situation. There were moments when I was bitter. However, I decided to look for learning opportunities and attend a training course of the German Foreign Office for professionals interested in serving as experts in post-conflict regions. And then, within a few weeks of finishing my training, my professional life took a dramatic change. The Foreign Ministry sent me to the Office of Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the OSCE, in Belgrade, to establish a parliamentary support program after the war in the Balkans. Soon, I found myself in a city that had been bombed by NATO forces only a few months ago. Not speaking any Serbian, not knowing anyone, and having been tasked with building a new OSCE program from scratch. After arriving with my 2 suitcases, I was dropped at a chubby hotel, sat hungry in my room, and had no idea how to even get some food, and even less to read the Cyrillic alphabet. Again, I asked myself, why did I do this? What was I thinking? But once more, it turned out to be a fascinating and life-altering experience. I was able to put together a multilateral program in support of a fragile democracy, made friends for life, and received an essential preparation for my next professional opportunity, which is the one that brought me to the United States and made DC my home since 2003. Now, here's what happens when things go sideways. You are forced to open your mind, take stock, reassess who you are. You let your imagination loose and ask yourself, what if? Instead of following a preordained professional career path, you're forced to look left and look right and around for any new options. This is a tough time, but also a very creative time. there are tremendous opportunities to discover new trails. So, when things do not go as planned, use that failure as an opportunity to let your curiosity take over. Look around and ask, what if? Change course, talk to people, inquire, migrate into new experiences. And if you get desperate, well, remember your grandmother. Third, my immigrant experience. In Germany, I learned many things about myself. My political views developed. I was an immigrant in a society that was often hostile or indifferent towards immigrants. I began seeing Mexico and Latin America from the outside and with greater interest when it came to the continent's contradictions and inequalities, things that I had not questioned before. I had to learn and understand the new way of life in many ways extremely different than the polite and careful Mexican culture I grew up at. Different also regarding the role of a Mexican woman, always smiling and accommodating. Germany was nothing like Mexico, and I needed to quickly learn the ways of doing things there. Many times, I was the only woman and the only immigrant in meetings of the German parliament with foreign policy debate, when foreign policy was debated. I was young, female and immigrant, so these were not the best requirements to confront a room full of elderly Germans. But I also learned a basic lesson during German coffee hours that has been very useful in my professional life. Let me tell you about it. A few months after arriving in Germany, I was invited to the house of a student friend to meet his family. Now, think of the same situation in a Mexican or Latino family. What would happen? Well, they would greet you and they would say, Helga, would you like a piece of cake? And you would go, no, gracias. After a while, you will be offered it again. Helga, take a piece. And you would say, no, thank you, you're very kind. But then they would insist, please take some, para probarlo aunque sea. And finally, you would give in, bueno, un pedacito. Well, if you insist, I will take a small piece. Now move that scene to Germany. Here I am, during afternoon cake time, Kuchen, in a German household. The mother of my friend offered me this wonderful German cake. Helga, would you like some cake? Now, the well-educated, modest Latina in me responds, no, thank you. And swiftly, cake was taken away to never be offered again. Right then and there, I realized that if I did not want to spend a cakeless life in Germany, I needed to say yes, and say it fast and say it firmly. Now, what works for cake works also in professional life. I had learned a valuable lesson that was important for my career. Say what needs to be said. Do not be shy. Do not be coy about your interests and about your ambition. When opportunities arrive, when you're asked if you're interested, say yes. Do say what you want. Because in real life, you never get offered the cake 3 times. Fourth, a seat at the table. So, throughout my life and my professional career, I fought for a seat at the table. This not only requires working hard, being prepared, and knowing the issues. It also means to be bold, overcome fears, and never let anyone suggest that you do not belong there. But being bold is not only about you. It's about your community as a whole. It's about making sure that every woman and man gets ahead. It is also, most importantly, after the devastating experiences of the past 4 years, about our active solidarity with African American and Asian communities. Breaking the glass ceiling is a metaphor that does not quite fit our experience, I believe. We have to bring down walls and ceilings at the same time. For us, rising upwards also means looking sideways and sometimes that means also taking a detour. As you have heard, my route into the United States was not the usual Mexican path. I did a little detour across the Atlantic before arriving here. But no matter how many walls or oceans are in the way, entrepreneurial Latinas, and you heard examples of those before, entrepreneurial Latinas always find a way to make America a better place. Coming to the United States meant a second immigration for me. And since my arrival to what is now my home, it has been important for me to engage and work towards increasing the political representation of Latinos and Latinas at all levels of government. As you know, the disparity is substantial. While Latinos represent 18% of the population, they hold only 1.2% of all local, state, and federal elected offices. This is not acceptable. And as professionals that are active and successful in the private sector, we have a particular responsibility to change this situation. We need to encourage and support Latino participation in the political process wherever we can. It is our responsibility to actively shape the course of this country, not only for the benefit of a particular community, but for a society as a whole, because we have a lot to contribute and our experience counts. So let me finish by saying, let us be those trailblazers for our children, friends, colleagues, and young professionals. This is my call to action to you. Let us be like Maria Luisa and Marta. What made them great is not that they had straight upwards careers, but that they confronted that almost unsurmountable challenges they faced, and how they kept going, and how they found ways to expand their wings and of their communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Helga, for that insightful presentation. I know we're all going to remember your grandmother and your mother, so thank you for sharing that example with us. And I think we're all going to remember your example of breaking the walls and breaking the ceilings and taking detours to achieve what we want. We will now open it up to audience for questions. Let's see. Well, I know one of the questions we have is, how does your journey connect to your work at Bayer? Can you tell us a little bit about your role?
Well, thanks, Natalia. Really, for me, it's all about the relevance, right? Bayer works and leads in two most essential areas, food and health. And about the impact for me, because we know there's 4 billion people in the world who do not have access to the basic health services, and almost 700 million people who are hungry. Bayer, for me, is interested, and I joined only last year, very interested, because they have set a very ambitious sustainability targets. They want to impact in a serious way and be a contributor to solving those challenges in the world. And I think more and more, this is what the society expects of companies. Not only that they respond to their clients and their shareholders, but that they provide solutions to our society. Now, what's interesting for me is that in Bayer, also somebody with this diverse background can join and can grow. So it shows you also how diverse the company is and how we're, taking this advantage of the different experiences. And as you mentioned before, I drive partnerships with international organizations at Bayer. Now imagine who could do that better than somebody that can connect so many worlds and so many ideas. And so this is a great opportunity for me to have an impact, to drive towards solutions to the big challenges for people and planet, and to connect to who I am and what I bring to the table.
Thank you, Helga. And Leslie Hernandez is telling us here that she will remember the offer of the cake. So I think it was a great example for all of us. You showed an image at the end of people running. Could you tell us what does that image represent?
My husband loves that image. This is actually, I was invited to the Halifax Security Forum, which is a national security forum that happens in Canada every year. And one of the things that it's hosted by the Canadian Defense Minister, who is the one running in the middle, in the background. And one of the things they do is he hosts a 5K run in the morning on Sunday. Well, here I am running it. And as you see, I'm one of the few women and many men. And I was thinking a lot because I really wanted to run, but they were running slower than me. And the defense minister was running slower than me. So I was thinking a long time, should I really stop and just be nice and do not run as quickly? Or should I just run my race? And I thought about my grandmother and I just ran my race. So I'm the one in the front. So I think I did arrive a little before the defense minister.
Well, thank you.
Run your races, everybody. Just run them.
Thank you, Helga, for your excellent presentation. Everybody is sharing with us how grateful they are to hear you speak. So Helga, Gabriela, Polly, we thank you for such incredible presentations. And Danielle and Marcia, thank you for encouraging us to embrace mentorship and shared responsibility at home. We're all fired up after hearing all of you speak, and I know our guests and I will put in practice your valuable advice. Thank you also to our guests. I mean, you are the driving force in our region. And we thank you for everything you do daily to improve yourself, your family, your business, and our St. Louis community. Alex?
Wow. This has been a wonderful evening, and I'm so proud to have been a part of it. I would once again like to thank our presenters, Polly Rodriguez, Gabriela Ramiréz-Arellano, and Helga Flores Trejo, for sharing their stories with us tonight. I would also like to thank our title sponsor, Midwest Bank Center, who continue to support us and this event. Also, if you haven't already, try out the virtual photo booth from our gold sponsor at Heart of the City Photo Booth. Thank you to our media partners, Feature Group USA, for broadcasting tonight. We've got a great virtual networking meeting planned directly following this event where you will get the opportunity to connect, discuss, and catch up. I look forward to seeing you all at the meeting coming up next, and you can find that information in the link on the sidebar as well as in the email titled Virtual Swag Bag, which should have been sent to you. Thank you all for attending.